quite the middle of the year. As a matter of fact, that happens on July 2nd at noon. July 3rd, if it's a leap year, and then not at noon. But everybody else is doing it, so here I am doing it too. My mom always said, if everybody jumped off a cliff, would you do it too? Sorry, Mom. Hey there, BookTube, welcome back to my channel. Yes, everyone else is doing it, so I guess I'm joining in the fun. I'm here to do the mid-year freak-out book tag that Shami started some years ago and that everyone is still doing around the middle of the year, except some people have been doing it for a couple of weeks now, and the middle of the year is not until July 2nd. But I decided to do my own little spin on it because, you know, this year I'm doing the Man Booker prize-winning books reading challenge, which is not an official challenge, but if I have my way, I will start that challenge. So I'm gonna do the mid-year freak-out book tag. I'm gonna answer the 13 questions, I think, and I'm just gonna use the Man Booker books that I have read so far to answer them. The Man Booker prize-winning books, not the books that have just been nominated, because I've read some of those this year too, but I'm gonna use the books that have won the Man Booker Prize that I have read in 2018 to answer the mid-year freak-out book tag. So here goes. These are the questions and these are my answers from my Man Booker prize-winning reading of 2018. First question is, best book you've read so far in 2018? So the best Man Booker prize-winning novel that I've read in 2018, and I've read a few of them, so these are some of them. I pulled them from my shelf. These are some of them, and these are some of them, and these are some of them. So I guess I should tell you the titles so you'll know which books I'm choosing from to answer these questions. So I have A Brief History of Seven Killings by Marlon James, Amsterdam by Ian McEwan, Vernon Godlittle by D.B.C. Pierre, Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie, The Sellout by Paul Beatty, The Luminaries by Eleanor Catton, Life and Times of Michael Kay by J.M. Coetzee, V.S. Naipaul's In a Free State, Lincoln and the Bardo by George Saunders, The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy, White Tiger by Aravind Adiga, Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro, and The Narrow Road to the Deep North by Richard Flanagan. So those are the Man Booker prize-winning books that I've read in 2018. Those are the only books that I'm going to choose from in order to answer questions from the mid-year freak-out book tag. So here goes. The first question is, best book you've read so far in 2018. So my adaptation, best Man Booker prize-winning book that I've read so far in 2018. Ooh, I'm gonna say this one. The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy is probably my best loved book of the set. This one is set in India, and it follows, or at least it starts to follow, a pair of twins, fraternal twins, a boy and a girl. They're living in probably what is a normal extended family situation in India. They're living with their mother's relatives. Their family business is a preserve factory, and as children they have this kind of free existence where they're being taught by all these extended family members. And one day their uncle's daughter, who's been living in England, comes to visit. The uncle had gone to England as an immigrant. He had married a white woman and had a child, and this child is coming to visit India. And unfortunately, when she comes, there is a tragic accident and the child dies. And these twins, the rest of the book follows the separate ways that they react to this tragedy. It delves into a series of events that both led up to the tragic drowning of the child and also the things that have resulted from this accident. It was beautifully told. I thought that it was such a really great expression of the Indian colonial experience, as well as the experience of immigrants in other countries. And I love the writing, love the story. Didn't love all the elements of the book, but I thought it all came together in such a beautiful way. This, I think, is a great epitome of what the Man Booker Prize recognizes. I'm a little surprised that it's not a part of the Golden Booker shortlist, but more on that later. So this is my best book. So this is the best Man Booker prize-winning book that I've read so far in 2018. Next is the best sequel you've read so far in 2018. Unfortunately, none of these books are sequels. I do have the book that I'm reading right now, which is Wolf Hall. It is is the first part in a series, because Bring Up the Bodies is the second part of that series, but I haven't read it yet, so I can't use it for this, I suppose. None of these other books are series or in sequels, so no answer for that from the Man Booker Prize winning reading. Book number 3, new release you haven't read yet but want to. The only one of these books that would be considered a new release is the most recent winner of the Man Booker Prize, and I have read it, so I don't have an answer for that one. But all the other books that I have gotten from the library of the 53 book strong Man Booker Prize winning list are all new to me because I haven't read them before, and some of them I'd never heard about before. Like, take for example, this is the winner of the 1970 Booker Prize, and it has this stunningly attractive cover that makes me just want to read it. I mean, I got it from the library a few days ago and I've been itching to pick it up ever since. It is pretty short. I just don't like the print. But these are not new releases. They're just new to me because I'd never heard of a lot of them before. So I guess I don't have an answer for that one either. New release you haven't read yet. None of these are really new releases, but I want to read them. I want to read them so bad. Question number 4 is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year. So again, none of these are new releases, but in September there will be a new shortlist for the 2018 Man Booker Prize. And I am looking forward to that because, you know, I'm a big follower of the prize, or at least I have been recently. So I'll be looking forward to hearing what books have been shortlisted for the prize and getting my hands on some of those, which are usually new releases here in the United States, because a lot of the books, we don't even get them or hear about their titles until they've been nominated for the prize, just because of the eligibility rules for the prize. The books have to have been published in England, which means that at the time when the short list or the long list is announced, some of the books have not yet been published in the United States. But more on that later. We'll talk more about that prize later. As for new releases for the second half of the year, all of the books that are on the prize list that I haven't read yet are anticipated for the rest of the year, but none of them are new releases. They're just new to me. Question number 5, your biggest disappointment from the books that I just mentioned, the Man Booker Prize winning novels that I've read in 2018. My biggest disappointment, I suppose, I guess there's 2. This one, to a lesser extent, The Sellout by Paul Beatty. This is the first book that was written by an American that won the Man Booker Prize, because up to this point, authors from the United States were not eligible to enter, and this is a year when the eligibility rules changed and Paul Beatty won the prize. I wanted to really enjoy this book, but it is a little bit of a satirical look on race relations in the United States, and I read it in 2017. I didn't enjoy it then. I reread it in 2018 because I wanted it to be eligible for what I was doing with the prize by reading all the books in this calendar year, and I didn't like it anymore. I think I understood the story a little bit better, but it was still a big disappointment for me. But my biggest disappointment of the Man Booker Prize winning books that I have read in 2018, my biggest disappointment is a book that's written by the Jamaican author Marlon James. This is A Brief History of 7 Killings. This is a book that I wanted to be so proud of. I wanted to recommend this book to everyone that I ever talked to about books. This is a book that I wanted to use as my thumbnail for all my videos on BookTube. This is a book that I wanted to just put on my shelf as decoration when everyone came into my house and asked me, so tell me about your book collection. What is your most prized possession on this bookshelf? I wanted to be able to point to this book and say, this is the book, this is it. It's written by a Jamaican, first Jamaican to win the Man Booker Prize, and go on and on and on and deliver some kind of a soliloquy about Marlon James and about this book. However, it is not a book that I'm comfortable talking about as a representation of me or my country because of the way the book describes Jamaican life and Jamaican political system. Granted, a lot of this book took place in the 1970s at a time when I wasn't even alive, and describing events that are real events that really did happen, but the language, just like the little private things that I kind of wish that this author had kept close. You know, it's like you have dirty laundry at home and they're in the laundry basket, but when company comes over, you wouldn't bring your dirty laundry out and say, here, look at my dirty clothes. You'd leave it someplace where only the people in your family know that it exists. This book felt a lot like airing dirty laundry. It felt like writing things about your intimate space and representing it in an even more gory and even more distasteful way than it happens all the time. Like, so I'm not disputing that some of the things that James writes about or fictionalizes here are real events, but the fact that the book only talks about those things made it seem like that was the complete representation of the country, and I didn't like that. I hated that every line of the book contains an expletive. I hated the way that women were talked about. So this for me is the biggest disappointment of my Man Booker prize winning collection. I mean, look at this book, how beautiful it is. Physically, how beautiful it is. It has the hummingbird on the front, which is Jamaica's national bird, which is a symbol of the country. I mean, it symbolizes so much. I wanted to love this book. I bought it. I kept it in almost pristine condition for so long, and now I can't share it with anyone. So yeah, that's my biggest disappointment of my Man Booker prize winning reading of 2018. Let's put it over there. Number 6 is the biggest surprise. The biggest surprise. This might be one of my biggest surprises. It's not a great surprise because the experience of reading this book was not great. But I got the brilliance of the book in its connection when I was done, when I put all the elements of the book together. But what was surprising to me about this book was the way the author talked about different demographics. The author, V.S. Naipaul, was born in Trinidad. His parents are of Indian descent, which means that he's a West Indian. And he grew up in Trinidad and then moved to England, which I expect suggests that he had a very similar background to mine. But the way he talks about international peoples in this book was surprising. The last story, which is a novella, it's set in Africa, but it has as its main characters a white English expatriate working in Africa. And from his experience and from the observations that he makes and the comments that he makes, made this book feel like it was written by someone who was racist. That was very surprising to me. Just reading this book, while this book was set in the 1970s and describes a situation that is probably very foreign to us, considering we now live in a much more politically correct climate, where elements of this book would probably not be printed or published, or would probably be censored if they were published today, where the perspectives offered by these characters would probably not be published in a book today. But reading this book in 2018 surprised me because I was confronted by ideas that were very different from what we experience through current reading, but were probably very commonplace in the time when this was written and published. That was surprising because I didn't expect the difference in the writing to be so jarring in the 40-something years since this book was published. I didn't expect that literature was going to be so different, that the expressions were going to be so different. So this was a big surprise for me. Not a great surprise either. Question number 7 is your favorite new author, debut author, or just new to you author? And I might say this one. J.M. Coetzee's Disgrace was the first book that I read by him, and then I read this one, Life and Times of Michael Kay. Disgrace is another Booker Prize winning book that I don't have because I got that one from the library. But I really enjoyed the writing style of this author. Now, Camille, from what Camille reads, counts John Maxwell Coetzee as one of his favorite authors. And I don't know if that has influenced me somehow, because I just watched a video with him yesterday where he was talking about J.M. Coetzee's and lauding his writing. So maybe I won't say him, or maybe I'm just distracted by the fact that J.M. Coetzee is not just a dual Man Booker Prize winning author, of which there are only a few of those, but he's also a Nobel Prize winning author. So I might be a little starstruck by all the accolades that have been lauded upon him. But Other than J.M. Coetzee, I must say I've also really started to enjoy the writing of Kazuo Ishiguro. This was my first book that I read by him. I also read The Buried Giant, which is not a Man Booker Prize contender by any means. But I so enjoy the allegories that he paints through these characters that he writes. And so far in 2018, I've read 2 books by him, and I'm enjoying his writing a lot. And I want to read more from him. So he's probably my newest favorite author from the Man Booker Prize winners that I have read in 2018. Prompt number 8 is to talk about your newest fictional crush. And I have absolutely no crushes in any of these books. Most of these, in fact, have characters that are people that you want to avoid in almost every situation. So let's go through them and you'll see why I'm not crushing on any of these characters. V.S. Naipaul's In a Free State featured characters who were silly, who made terrible choices, or people who were racist. Yeah. In Remains of the Day featured a butler who had let his life go by and was now filled with regret, but too old to do anything about a lot of what he regretted. The Sellout by Paul Beatty featured an African-American male character who was too smart, intellectually smart for his own good, but was also emotionally disturbed from having been raised by a mentally abusive father. The White Tiger featured an Indian entrepreneur who justified the murders that he had committed. Yeah. The Narrow Road to the Deep North was again about a man who was living with regret, telling the story of his life. And while he was telling about the life that he was living, some of his actions were odious. The way he talked about women and treated women, he was just a misogynistic bore. Let's put it like that. Lincoln and the Bardo featured a lot of deceased characters. Yeah. Arundhati Roy's characters, there might have been a character in here that I was sympathetic towards, but he was also an untouchable, which meant that even if I'd liked him, I couldn't do anything about it. Life and Times of Michael K. featured a guy who had a physical disfigurement, but that wasn't what was weird about him. He had also grown up in a kind of society that meant that he was really a simpleton. I have nothing against simpletons, but I'm not crushing on them. Midnight's Children, no. I don't like Salman Rushdie, the author. I don't think I could crush on any character that he created. Ian McEwan's Amsterdam featured these men who were at war with themselves and with each other, and the way they described their thought process towards the decisions that they made, which were all bad decisions, but also the way they justify some of those things made them not necessarily people that you wanted to hang around with. Vernon Godlittle featured a teenage main character who was disturbed. And Eleanor Catton's The Luminaries featured about 15 eligible men who none of them were people that you wanted to know personally, because they were all calculating criminals, all of them criminals, men, women, in between criminals. So no, none of these are people that I wanted to know. Brief History of 7 Killings, the only person that you might have imagined yourself wanting to meet personally might have been the singer, which is the way that the author referred to the Bob Marley character in here. But Bob Marley had a lot of women. I'm not crushing on him. Not pictured here are a couple of other books that I read and don't have anymore from the library. The Life of Pi by Yann Martel featured a young male character as well, not crushing on him. So no, also not pictured is Disgrace by J.M. Coetzee, which featured an mature professor who was also a misogynistic, male chauvinist, who did not have many or any attractive qualities. So no, I'm not crushing on any of these fictional characters. So question number 9, ask for your newest favorite character. In all of these books, the only character that I could tell you that I really liked, not crushing, liked. There was a character in here, and I can't remember what his name is, but Velutha. Velutha was probably my favorite character in here because he went down as the hero, even though he went down, I think. Velutha in this book was probably my favorite character in all the Ben Booker Prize winning novels that I read this year. Velutha, I hope it's Velutha, in Arundhati Roy's The God of Small Things. Other than that, I liked Abraham Lincoln's character in here. Not as much from what he says, but from how he interacts. The way that he interacts with his son, the connection that he had with his son, felt very moved by that relationship that was described in here. So those are probably my 2 favorite characters from these books. Prompt number 10 is a book that made you cry. There was a section in here that describes a young boy being abused and not being understood, not having anyone who is even seeking to understand him. And it made my heart go out to this character. And then somebody said some curse words, and it just took me right out of that place. The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro described the regrets of this older gentleman. He was a butler, and as he's taking this trip, literally and figuratively, down memory lane, and remembering some of the choices that he was called upon to make, I felt very moved and very compassionate for him, because at the time I could see where he thought he had to make the decision that he did because of the priorities that he had established in his life. But I'm sure, looking back, as we were along with him, we could see the impossibility of his choices and how he made the wrong decisions when he did them. And I cried for him. I cried for the decision that I could see him making the wrong decision. I could see him regretting it later. And there was just this one point in here that really moved me. And I'm not going to be able to find it now, but just know that it exists in this book. A book that made you happy. None of these were really happy stories. There was a section, no. The Slums, no. I wouldn't say that this made me happy, but there is a section in the Luminaries where these characters, who at first seemed to be victims, felt like they were able to take advantage. Like, it felt like they got their comeuppance, and it was finally revealed that they weren't as victimized as the others thought that they were. Like, when others were backing them into corners and trying to take advantage of them, that they were actually just allowing that to happen so they could have the last laugh. And it didn't make me happy, but it felt like a good role reversal, kind of. Prompt number 12 is the most beautiful book that you've bought or received so far this year. And for that, I'm going to choose A Narrow Road to the Deep North by Richard Flanagan, which I got from my awesome best friend. I love the minimalistic cover of this book, the blue, which is a beautiful shade of blue. And this ladder that is just running up the middle of this book with this rose, I think it's a rose, it's not a rose, with this flower at the bottom. I think it's so beautiful. I think maybe the words could have been a little smaller if we want to focus on this ladder, except it looks like a ladder, but it's really not. This book is about a railroad, so this is actually a railroad. I don't know why I just figured that out. I thought this was a ladder. It's not a ladder. This is a railroad. The book is about Japanese prisoners of war from Australia and Tasmania who are working to build this death railway between Burma and Thailand in the 1940s. And here's this death railroad, which, whether the railroad is going there or coming here, this is the roads at the end. And at some point, the railroad ends. I love this cover. I love this cover. I think it's beautiful. This is my choice of the most beautiful book that I've received from the Man Booker Prize list this year. A lot of these other books are not mine, so I can't consider that I got them this year either. But I also really love the cover of this book. But I didn't buy it this year. I bought this one last year, so it doesn't qualify. Prom number 13 is books that you need to read this year. Okay, let's show them to you. How much time do you have? All of these are Man Booker Prize winning books that I've gotten from the library. Some of these are books that I have. These are not from the library. And there's also that one. So yeah. These are all Man Booker Prize winning books that I have to read by the end of the year. So you know I have my reading cut out for me for the rest of this year. So thanks for watching this video. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you enjoyed the Man Booker Prize edition of the Mid-Year Book Freakout tag. Everyone else is doing it. I didn't want to disappoint my mom, so I didn't do it exactly the way other people have. So I did it my own way, and I'd love to chat with you in the comments if you enjoyed my little take on this tag. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video with someone who doesn't know that I have a booktube channel, and maybe you guys could talk about me behind my back. Thanks for watching. We'll talk later. Until next time, happy reading. Bye.